Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of The Dairy Edge. With the current lockdown restrictions in place, Teagasc are running a weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also being made available as a podcast. On this week's webinar, Stuart Charles speaks to Head of Agriculture at AIB, Tadgh Buckley, Specialist Patrick Gowing and Cork dairy farmer Mike Birmingham about the financial outlook for dairy farmers and simple financial tools that work well on farm.
Okay, so good morning everybody and welcome along to today's Let's Talk Dairy webinar. Today I'm joined by Tadgh Buckley, Head of Agriculture with AIB, Mike Birmingham, dairy farmer from just outside of Fermoy in County Cork, and Patrick Gowing, who's the expansion specialist with Teagasc based in Portlaoise. Today we're going to talk to Tadgh about the financial situation in agriculture currently. So started out with a very positive situation in terms of dairying in particular. At the start of the year, real positive prospects on the cards, and unfortunately COVID came along then and has changed that outlook somewhat. So Tadgh is just going to give us a rundown on that. Thankfully, I suppose we've seen some of the co-ops lift their prices in the last couple of days and others to hold, which has been a positive situation given that there was a lot of talk of further decreases a month or two ago. So Tadgh is going to talk us through the financial situation, or we're going to have put a few questions to him on how he sees things going over the next while. And then we're going to talk to Mike, because Mike is a good example of a person who keeps good track of their money movements in and out of their business and their household. And Mike is going to tell us how he does it. I suppose what's different from what you might expect us to be promoting is that Mike has a very, very simple, straightforward way of actually tracking his financial transactions within the household and the farm. So Patrick is keeping an eye on a survey or a poll that we put up at the start there that you should have seen when you joined. And if you just respond to that, he's going to comment on that midway through the session. Okay. So just going to move over to talk to Tadgh, and we'll see what the situation is like in the banking circles. So thanks, Tadgh, for joining us. And I suppose, would you care to comment on how you see things looking now at the moment? I suppose when we started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, about today, things weren't looking as positive as they are currently, or, well, we're looking a lot more negative than they were currently. So what way are you looking at it now within the bank at the moment, and what way do you see milk price going? And I suppose, are you stressing your plans as a result of the concerns over milk price, I suppose, more?
Hi Stuart, how are you doing? First of all, thanks a million for the opportunity to catch up today. So I suppose this year has been a bit of a roller coaster year so far. When we, at the start of the year, what we do is we effectively set what we think base price is going to be for the year before solids, and then we adjust each farmer's budget then based on their solids, what they are achieving on farm after that. So we would have been working on a base price, including that probably assumption in January of, we thought it'd probably be around 32 cents for the year. And obviously then coronavirus came, and the impact was fairly immediate on the commodity markets, where you saw butter and skim, that mix dropping by, like, within a fortnight, it dropped by 25%. And at that stage, it was looking like we were going to face potentially a fairly serious situation with milk price. But, that lasted maybe a couple of weeks. But what we've seen since is a fairly significant rally in prices. And we haven't seen the fall in cheese as much. And we've seen, the recovery. Those, like, powders has recovered substantially from where the drop. It's back to similar levels to was even last year now, but butter is still back a lot. But I suppose we were now working on the basis of a 28 cent base for 2020. We think we're probably maybe a small bit conservative even on that now, because 60% of the supply is in the first 6 months of the year. So even if we do see further weakness in the back end of the year, which at the moment the markets aren't showing, but I suppose you don't know whether there's a second wave and the impact that could have if there is. I still think we're probably going to be looking at maybe an average price for this year, 29 cents a litre, which overall isn't probably too bad an outcome versus what we thought it could have been maybe in late March, early April. Now, having said that, what we have seen, as we've gone over the last 6 weeks, is a major weather challenge for some farmers. It's relatively localized, but in that it's not widespread like it was in 2018. But we do have some farmers who are under an awful lot of pressure from a drought perspective, and some of the guys have got rain, and more of them haven't got a whole pile yet, and that's going to create like a cost that could easily end up costing a farmer 2-3 cents a litre over what they were budgeting at the start of the year. So that's definitely going to put guys under pressure, but still not as probably much as we feared the coronavirus milk price drop could have been in early April.
Well, I suppose to be fair, there was some mutings even that we were looking at nearly a 6 cent swing on the basis of it, or there was even talk of 22 of a base at one point. So given where we're standing at this moment in time, all milk processed correctly and safely, we'll say, or managed through the situation has been excellent from the point of view of the co-ops, and I think they deserve good credit for that. They managed the situation quite well. And then from a farming perspective, I suppose, have you seen much of a change in terms of movement in current account transactions and so forth in the short term, or have you seen much in terms of extra inquiries as yet? Probably hasn't really begun to hit home yet, maybe, in terms of the reduction relative.
Yeah, dairy is a bit different from some of the other sectors that we deal with. We always would have seen dairy, the impact in dairy as being a kind of a lag effect. So if you take hospitality, take hotels or bars, like the impact was immediate, because they had to close. So straight away, bang, your revenue is gone. Whereas with the dairy side of it, it was always, I suppose, we 3 concerns. The first concern was, will guys be able to get inputs? And that hasn't proved to be a challenge, thankfully. The second thing, as you say, was the big concern was, will their output be processed? Will the milk be processed? And again, as you say, I think the industry's done a fantastic job to manage to get through the peak without any disruption. And the third thing then was like the impact of the price drop. That would always really take off from a cash flow point of view as you come towards August, September onwards, because of the fact that that's when your income starts to tail off, and obviously the costs that you have to cover from the back end become payable. So particularly on the weather side of it, when a lot of the feed costs that are incurred, they start becoming falling due as we progress through the year. So we haven't seen a whole pile yet, though we're tracking overdraft utilization. We track it always month on month, and we haven't seen any material change in the overdraft utilization for the dairy sector as of yet. So we have some customers that have come to us looking for cash flow support. And I suppose maybe some of that is guys taking a cautious approach, which is no harm either. And more guys that know because of the weather, they are going to be under pressure from the cash flow point of view, and they're getting ready now. But it wouldn't be a widespread, it would be a trickle rather than a flow, is probably the best way to describe it.
Okay, yeah. So I suppose, given the year that's in it in terms of Thames and so forth, finishing up in a lot of cases, and a lot of approvals in place, and maybe people have been cautious maybe about doing anything in the short term, but there can be some significant projects to be completed. What would your advice be to farmers that have approvals in place now, but maybe are kind of wondering should they, shouldn't they, and what advice would the bank be giving those people? And I suppose contingency, sorry to cut across it, the contingency fund is probably something that I see from my perspective is a thing that people underestimate as well. So maybe any pointers that you might have in that regard as well would be.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we come across quite regularly. You'd always need to factor in the contingency, even in normal circumstances, because it's very difficult to price agricultural jobs. It's very difficult to price any job, any construction job, but agricultural jobs can often be more difficult to price accurately, because often you hit stuff that you don't expect to do, or sometimes farmers maybe do more than they initially planned to do. So yeah, definitely building in a contingency of anything 10 and 20% is recommended regardless. So I suppose from a dairy perspective, the thing that you've got to realize is that if you're planning a milking facility, and if you need that milking facility next February, you got to be absolutely certain you're going to have it. You can't miss out by 2 months with a milking facility. Cubicles, obviously the same. So what we'd be saying to guys is, you've got to be, if you've got your approval in place, you just really want to be working on the basis that you can take a project delay of 1 to 2 months beyond where you think it's going to be, because there's no point in, if you're sitting down and you're saying, Jesus, I'll be all out to have it ready by February now. You really are pushing, it's going to be tight. It's going to be very tight. And if one guy lets you down could be genuine reason or whatever, weather could cause difficulties at the back end, you really got to be sure that you're going to hit those deadlines and be realistic with your timescales as well. And
then in terms of the financial side of things, then Tadhg, I suppose, sometimes there can be a knee-jerk reaction to kind of the likes of COVID announcements and, we'll say, drops in the dairy auction in New Zealand and so forth like that, and people decide that they're not going to go ahead with a big job. And it's actually fundamental to the business itself, really. So I often say to people, like, stick to the plan. If you're planning on doing this job, put the finance in place to do it. If you're planning on doing this job, you're obviously expecting to be in a position to pay for it, and it's not going to be paid for in the next 12 months. So think about your situation. Like, so have you seen people maybe that have money secured for big jobs kind of maybe pausing in the short term, or are they still beginning to move on, or what kind of engagement are you getting in relation to capital investment this year?
Yeah, so I suppose just on that, if I look at how if we have a farmer that comes into us with a big capital project now versus last February, we do exactly the same analysis. So we're still working on the same long-term milk price. 30 cent a litre is our long-term base milk price. We're not saying we think it's going to be that, but that's what we're doing our budgets on. And then we put in stress tests after that for, we stress the interest rate, and we stress the milk price as well for, to take if the business does suffer a shock, can it withstand it, be it weather or other. So we're still working on exactly the same long-term milk prices were pre-COVID. And I think exactly that, if you're looking at doing a capital project, it's going to be a 10 to 15 year project in terms of getting a return on it. So, the confidence that we'd have in the markets is not, you don't completely take a knee-jerk change because of something which is very significant like COVID, but this will pass too. And the long-term outlook that we'd have in the sector isn't changed by what's happened. So we haven't, a lot of our guys that had approvals in place, that had plans in place to start, that is, most of those guys have progressed. I suppose what we did see all right in the last 2 months is that guys who might be thinking about doing something may have pressed pause. No, that might be more to do with the fact that they might think they might get it done this year because of trying to, get contractors and get supplies and all that. And maybe as well as that, not being sure what cash flow is going to look like for the rest of the year. But we've seen guys progressing, in fairness, with their construction projects. But I think, as you say, that's it. I think that you've got to look at this as a 15-year outlook on these things. And if you're getting very, very concerned because of a short-term impact like that, sometimes it's probably maybe being there mightn't be necessarily that concern needed. If you're confident in your long-term outlook, you should progress, really. I think once you're happy that you can get the project done in the timescales you're expected and the cost that you expect to do it as well.
Yeah, I suppose one of your colleagues describes what you're describing there as the Asher money. I think it's a good way of describing it. So the digger was in the yard, so sure, I got him to do Asher. I asked him to do that as well while he was here. So I suppose it's in a year like this that you have to be careful of that kind of situation, that you don't overspend, because very rapidly it's 10,000 can become 20,000, and that can be where the pressure can come on in a cash flow situation, because you've secured the finance for the job of 100,000 or whatever, but suddenly we've spent 110, and the 10 is coming out of the current account as opposed to coming out of the loan, which has been pushed out over the 7 or 10 or 15 years depending on the project. And then maybe do you see a share of that? Do you actually see a share of that on an annual basis that people come back at the end of the year having overspent on some stuff maybe that they had already financed, looking for extra finance?
Yeah, you see, I suppose, what tends to happen is that like we will have farmers that, if you sit down at the start of the year and they say, well, look, I'm going to spend €15,000 on, for instance, they might say they're upgrading their water system, and they say, I'm spending 15,000 that, and I expect the price to be 32 cent a litre, and I expect normal weather conditions, so like I'll have no problem in paying that out of cash flow. And then something happens like COVID and weather, and both in this case, and suddenly then that 15 grand isn't there. So what ends up happening to fund it is the overdraft or your working capital facilities. So yeah, we do see a bit of that. And I suppose what I would say to guys is, if you did some of that, if you did that even last year, you can still look at putting finance in place for it now. So you could still come to your bank and say, I spent 15,000 on this last year. I did it from cash flow. I now want to put finance in place retrospectively. And you can do that, and you can replenish your working capital with that 15,000, and give it back to the cash flow and to help you get through the year. So yeah, we do see a good bit of that happening. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it's because farmers genuinely thought that my cash flow is going to be fine, so I'll be able to do it, and then something untoward happens, like has happened in 2018 with weather, or this year with the mid price that's still probably going to be 2 to 3 cents below where we all thought it was going to be in January.
Yeah, so just with that in mind, then, would you actually prefer if people approached you in advance and secured the finance for the capital investment? And I suppose there's a sense of we like to try and pay our own way as a nation in general. Like, we like to own our properties, etc. In regards to mortgages, and people and farming in particular love to pay down debt very quickly and so forth. But is there a certain element of, could we manage the money a bit better in terms of approaching you and your colleagues for the finance for this kind of work? And okay, if the cash flow comes good then, and we're in a position to clear off the loan within 12 months or 18 months, fair enough. But like, in terms of reserves of cash and stuff, are we inclined to cut our cloth too close to the measure in terms of having enough to do what we need to do on an annual basis?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, I always say to farmers that I deal with, like, if you're borrowing, don't don't be shortening it deliberately. So in other words, if you're doing a project and so the term of the finance will depend on the asset that you're funding. So for instance, if you're putting up a shed, like, you can get that funding over 15 years potentially. So, I mean, we would have farmers say, well, I want it over 7 because I want to pay it over 7. Well, what I'd be saying to them is, like, you can take it over 10 or 12 and still pay it over 7 if you want, because you paid ahead of schedule. If it's a variable rate loan, there's no penalty for paying it ahead of schedule. And then you can choose to pay ahead of schedule in all the years you can afford it, but the year you can't afford it, then you can go back to your 10 or 12 year repayment schedule. So yeah, I say, guys, don't be in such a panic to pay. And as you said, Stuart, it's no harm to build up a bit of a buffer of, like, so what I'd say to guys always, like, you should try and have 6 to 12 months repayments put aside that you can get your hands on for a really, really bad year. So then in a year like that, if you've that put aside, you can work on the basis that the farm doesn't have to make its repayments for that year, if you know what I mean. So rather than the first thing to do to try and knock off debt as fast as possible, to look at building up a buffer. It doesn't have to be massive, but build that up, have it there, and take a slightly longer term than maybe you were intending, and you can still pay it back over a shorter term if you want. But then you control your cash flow much better than having to go on a 7-year term and find, oh Christ, I need to switch to 10, and then you've got to get the bank to change that for you. So you're not in control. You're looking for the change. Whereas if it's the other way around, you're the person that largely governs what term
you make the decision yourself. Like, yeah. And I suppose just the final question, then, you've kind of touched on it there in terms of the retro financing of some capital that was done last year maybe, but what other options are available? I suppose at the moment we're probably talking about the the people in the drought hit areas predominantly now, because as we've said, the COVID scenario hasn't been as severe, but where cash flow is coming under pressure, and I've heard of a couple of cases where things have just gone wrong on farms and so forth, so that will put pressure on cash flow in certain cases. So what kind of options are available to people this year? So
the first thing that's available is the payment break. You can get a 3-month payment break, but that deadline is very fast approaching, because that break has to be in place and operational by the 30th of June. So really, if that's something that you're considering, you need to be contacting your bank this week. So that's the first thing that's available, and that's available because for COVID impacted customers. But all dairy farmers are effectively COVID impacted, because the price has been reduced because of COVID-19. So the other options then are, I spoke about retrospectively funding investment. We did a lot of that in 2018, actually, during the drought period, where we had a very good year in 17 from a mid price point of view. So a lot of guys did stuff in cash flow in 17, and we ended up retrospectively funding that in 18 and putting that money into the farm cash. So then that option is there. You've got working capital that you could look at for increased working capital, or you could look at potentially the interest-only route as well, if that's something that I suppose the interest-only really only suits guys that have a lot of debt, a lot of borrowings, and it does help alleviate cash flow, but it's not a massive short-term benefit, because it doesn't put liquidity into the business. It doesn't inject cash into the business like, say, retrospectively funding investment would be, or getting additional working capital. You're straight away getting cash. Interest only, you only get it because it's what it's doing is it's reducing the future outgoings, but it's not giving you, a sharp injection of capital. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very good. So I'm just going to move to Patrick there, just to maybe give a few words on the poll that we've 17 people on the webinar there at the moment. So just to see what kind of information did they give back to the questions. You might just outline the questions as well, Patrick, just briefly, and it might feed back into some of what Teagasc said, and it might also give us a bit of context, I suppose, for what Mike is going to talk about also.
Yeah, thanks, George. So the first question was, who do you seek your financial advice from? And it's a bit of a range, and some people are getting information from multiple sources, which is great. So the most common is the accountant, and then it's followed by the bank and the agriculture advisor. I think within that, it's great to see people looking. Obviously, the accountant has a good understanding of your business, but also contacting your bank and your agriculture advisor and using the team to help plan the farm forward is very important, because with some of these decisions that you discussed, and potentially if you're looking at cash flow issues, you need a couple of advices and people are working for you to help you out through the system. The second question is, do you do some form of cash flow planning for your business? And 93% of the people said they did, which is great to see. The third question is, if you have answered yes to the above, how do you do it? So again, there's a bit of a range in this. So some people on the back of an envelope each month, so just keep an idea of ingoings and outgoings. Some people have a farm diary and they write it down throughout the year. That's about 30% of people as well. And then the next is the software packages like Cashminder or Cost Control Planner. About 30% of people are using software packages to help. So I suppose the one thing I would say on that is, I don't mind what you do once you're doing it, and you're keeping a good record. And if it works for you and you feel you have a good handle on your business and your cash flows, then stick to what you're comfortable with. And then there was just a question there on how often do you do it. So 45% of people are doing it monthly, which is great. And I think Teagasc would have hit on that, is like the flow of cash through a dairy business isn't it changes from month to month following the milk checks. And it's very important, and also the costs are different at different times. So the more you look at it, the better. 34% of people do it on a yearly basis, and then some people are doing it both. So they do a yearly budget and then they track it through the year, which probably is best practice. So you look ahead, see what you can do, and then monitor it as the year goes out. And the last question in short was, how many of the people on the survey see a potential cash flow issue towards the end of the year? And it was about 20% of people didn't know, I suppose, but of the balance then, it was about half and half. So 40% of people said they're okay, and the other 40 said they may see an issue with cash flow towards the end of the year, maybe it's associated with drought or maybe the lower milk price. So I suppose some people there may just have to sit down again and look to their figures and look at. And I'll just take the opportunity, Stuart, to say like Teagasc are just running a small campaign on cash flow planning as a discipline. And I think as businesses grow and as people start getting to bigger herds of cows and level of debt, the importance of cash flow planning and managing your business is up there with grass budgeting or watching your breeding. And to help that, Teagasc have a dedicated web page on the website, and they have a small tool there. It's called the 5-minute cash flow. That just helps you give you a snapshot of where your farm is compared to last year, and gives you a bit of a help if you want to move forward on it.
Very good. So I suppose, Tadhg, I suppose, would you care to comment in terms of the responses there? We obviously have a good audience in terms of people that are kind of looking at cash flow. Is it something? Would it not be one of the things that you'd probably say in conversations that I've had with you in the past, that there isn't a huge amount of it happening on farm generally, in your opinion, in terms of cash flow management or cash flow monitoring? Sorry.
Yeah, I suppose there's probably not as much of it happening as maybe we'd like. I suppose I just echo what Patrick said. The most important thing is it's not necessarily the how you do it. It's that you do it at all. And I think as well as that, it doesn't need to be massively detailed in a lot of cases. Like if you know how you did last year, roughly, then that gives you a great chance to be able to figure out how this year's going to be. So that's the first part. And then if something happens, like you go, okay, I'm down 3 cents a litre. Well, if you know I produced 500,000 litres last year, straight away I know I'm down 15 grand. And if you know that the farm I worked out and was comfortable enough, had a surplus of 20 last year, well, you're probably going to be okay. But I suppose the one other thing I'd say on the cash flow is you've got to factor in all the household income and costs. So what I would see at times with the cash flow is that the cash flow is just confined to the farm, which is obviously the first part of it. But you've got to factor in then what does the farm have to supply to the household, because that's at the end of the day the cash is what's coming in and what's going out, and sometimes that can be often maybe underestimated on farms, that how much the farm actually has to pay in terms of living expenses can be maybe more than people think at times. So yeah, that's probably something I definitely think that needs to be kept in mind when farmers are planning it.
And of course as well, Patrick has pointed out several times there in the last couple of months in meetings that we've been having that some people have lost their jobs as a result of COVID, so that could actually rule out a source of income into the household maybe potentially as well, and that the farm is expected to carry the can for that. So it's a very important point that you make about monitoring the cash flow as well, because it could be just under more pressure than you would. So okay, you can take last year as being a normal year, but if this year is after changing in that context, then the farm is actually going to have to carry more. So your 20,000 surplus may not exist at all. So you can't afford to do that capital investment, or you definitely need to finance it. So, okay, so I suppose both the survey or the poll and what Tadhg has said there is teeing us up nicely now to talk to Mike. And Patrick has said there about the importance of grassland management and breeding and so forth. And Mike is excellent at both of these already, and you'll know that he's an award-winning farmer in terms of the grassland or grass 10 campaign. We should have been having an event with you, Mike, in the next couple of weeks, but we unfortunately got away with it. Yeah. So we're catching you for this instead.
Thanks, Stuart.
And you won't get away with the grass thing either. So Mike, I suppose you're new entrant to dairying back in 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
But you've been cash flow monitoring or budgeting, I suppose, before that, even when you had a cattle enterprise and when you had a contract rearing enterprise as well. I suppose just initially, I suppose I'll ask you to tell people, how do you actually keep track of movement of money in and out of the farm and the house?
Oh, right, Stuart. Thanks a million for having me. Well, we do it simply enough now, to be honest with you. All I have is a ledger copybook here, like, the one you'd have in school. And all we do really is we've taken the stuff out of the the inputs for the profit monitor. So we've them down one column, let's say, and we have the months then on the other column and across the way. And all we do then is once a month. Sorry, Stuart. Once a month, then we just update from the bank account and the checkbooks what's gone out of the account, and then in another copybook, then we write down what's owing. Let's say, so we try and balance the books as best we can that way.
Okay, so and just to pick up on something that Tadgh said there, and in the conversations we've been having in advance of today, you said as well that you're able to basically nearly turn the sheet back and you can see what you did last month and in the same month last year. And that's so a good guide.
It's a great guide. Like, that's the main thing there that we do is let's say we can look back over the last 3 years, let's say now, and we can see now in June how much we'd spend in June, let's say. So we know then if we're doing something out of kilt in the farm, like if we're, like, I know now we had the drought, so we had to feed a bit heavier this month, like, so that's what will drive up the meal cost this month compared to last year. So we can keep a track on exactly where the money is going really in that way, that we can see that the money is going on feeding, and maybe we could pare back other things then if required, like, so it's a handy guide just to see where we're at today, let's say, and where we could, and then we can flick back. Let's say if we're doing out this month now, we know we've got our milk check in now, so we know what we have and we know what we have to spend. And if we have a little bit left over, well, we can say what surprise is going to come up over the next couple of months by looking back over last year's.
Okay, very good. And I suppose you kind of touched on it there in your answer already, but when exactly do you do it?
We probably do it at the end of the month, let's say the first, second or third day of the month, we'd probably sit down. We can go online to check our bank account, and we just go back over the checkbooks and we write in what was spent and where it went. And in that month then as well, we'll probably write down, let's say, we'll be doing June's ones now, let's say next week in July. So in July, then we'll be able to write down what the contractors did in June. And if we bought supplies or something that might be owing till July or August, we can write that into the book as that's what's that could be going forward stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. And what are the benefits of doing what you're doing in your mind?
I suppose the benefits are, you see, we are no entrants, and we're cash hungry all the time, really. So,
not a feeling.
So yeah, so like we'd have little pride. Like, I suppose the past couple of years now, I've been doing jobs out of cash flow, like, and really what we want to do is, you'd end up spending 10 or 15 to 20,000 maybe a year on capital jobs, like, but we're trying to save up the money. So we know, we don't want to start a job now in June, let's say, and it's going to cost us 20,000, right? We don't want to end up in November saying, geez, I need 20,000 now to pay my merchant, or I need 20,000 to pay. We want to be able to be sure when we're writing that check that it's not going to let someone else down. That's for money. That's the main priority, really, of it.
So it's a bit like the grass budgeting. So it's giving you a 3 or 4 month window, maybe even 6 month window, because of the information that you have from the previous years to say that I'm going to have to spend X, and we know we're going to have Y. So there's Z is what's left in the middle, basically.
Z is what's left. Z is what's left in to put in the spur roadways or do the water or do that kind of work, or else it's a case of, look, we won't do that this year. We'll put it off to next year. And we leave a bit of what you could do, or we've done previously is, let's say, we mightn't have enough reserve build up. So what we do is we might only have 10,000. So you could go ahead in November or December and forward buy your fertilizer. So that next April, next year, then when you should be paying for your fertilizer in May, June, July, you will have the money saved up and a bit on top. So you might be able to tackle the project in, if you wanted to.
Okay, very good. And I suppose you're kind of, Teagasc also mentioned it, I think, during the conversation we were having with him, but in terms of your seasonal milk supply situation, so you come to October, November, and the money is beginning to fade off. But
dry up. And Sandy's coming.
Sarah and Kaylee are putting on pressure for big pricey presents. And Tina has to be seen to as well. So what do you do in terms of planning to deal with that? I suppose, famine, I suppose, nearly.
Dry period.
The dry period, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because that like we dry up the cows here on the 10th of December, like, so we've no money in February, and really the next big milk check will come in April, like, so like we have to budget that you need probably, I suppose, you'd know better, maybe €300 a cow or something to carry you between your cost of living and other stuff to get you from let's say probably the end of November over to, let's say, the 20th of April, so you probably want to have that we try and build that into the system as well, like, that we would have that deposit there that we could use, keep things ticking over till then, like, because we wouldn't see another good milk check till, let's say, to be April before we'd see a good check again, like, to get the show on the road again for the year.
Okay, I suppose Teagasc also mentioned this as well, and you have a very good handle on this from talking to you. The cost of running the household, I'm not going to ask you for exact figures now or to out anybody, but it's a lot more than people often think, I think. And we'll say, like, given the current circumstances and things being locked down, you've even noticed that there's been less money spent this year because of less transport costs, etc.
That's true, Stuart. Yeah, like, we're not going to the matches, so there's a big saving there on that. So, like, we've seen now the household spending since the COVID thing our household spending has gone way down, to be honest with you. I'd say we're nearly saving €1,000 a month on household spending, but I think the lads will recoup that now in the next couple of months, but no, it is one, like, there's a lot of money goes into a house, to be honest with you. You want to, like, it would surprise you between running 2 cars now and ESB and everything, like, there's a fair cost in that, to be fair,
And in terms of dealing with that now, during the dry period and so forth, have you a standing order set up from the farm account?
Yeah, we lodge in money into our own personal account at the start of every month, and let's say sometimes you'd have to top it up at the end of the month. Let's say that we'd be going a bit strong, but we generally transfer it over, but we kind of keep an eye on the household spending. We kind of keep it separate to the farm. Let's say we just keep a track of it in the notebook as well. We keep a track of household spending, but we do that monthly as well. We take when we're looking through our bank statement, we take all the household stuff, your ESB and your phones and stuff like that out, and we put that into a separate page then, so that we really have what the farm is really making and what the house is really costing, I suppose,
Yeah, okay, very good. So, and you would have said there as well, obviously, given the COVID scenario, that you've seen the drop in the household expenses, but like exactly just reiterating and reinforcing what Teagasc said, there's very little difference in your spending at the farm level compared to last year. Like,
I'd say we did the first quarter there up to April, there was €35 in the difference between this year and last year, to be honest with you. That's what it was now, for just over 100 cow herd, but so farm spending, it's very hard to, I don't know, maybe we're wrong here, but I think it's very hard to get the stuff you need to put into the cows. Let's say it's hard enough to drive down where you save money is probably holding off on capital jobs, I'd say, would probably be one, and maybe unperforming stock would be another way of keeping it down. But the general thing, it's nearly the same year on year, really, you know.
Yeah. So you also made comments there now when we were talking this morning about how you're also prioritise not cutting money on reseeding or on lime or anything. You've all and because you have your budget there together from last year, or your costs from last year, you kind of know that you've almost factored in a spend on reseeding or a spend on lime for the farm. So it doesn't shake the business when you get a kind of a funny milk price.
No, so, like it's probably very important to probably do the milk recording and, let's say, do good farming practices, because like they'll probably make you more resilient for the likes of now at the moment. Like, you know, like if you can grow more grass, you don't have to buy more feed, or you don't have to spread as much fertilizer, like, you know.
Yes.
So, you know, you're not wasting anything either, I suppose, really.
So I suppose I didn't kind of tell you I was going to ask you this one maybe, but we'll say for people that aren't doing any kind of cash flow monitoring, and like I said to you, I think a lot of people do some form of it, a bit like walking grass. They might be walking it, but they're not putting the figures on it. What would your advice be to people? I suppose, what have the benefits that you've seen from doing it in the past, and how you see it helping you into the future as well?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, I suppose the monthly cash flow, like we used to do a budget there every year, you know, of you know, we're only going to spend 15,000 and nuts now this year, and you go back, then you're doing your profit manager in the year and you spend 25, and you know, when you're doing out a budget, you're you're putting in all the figures you want to put in, like, you know, but they don't really happen. But when you're doing it every month, you can probably go forward 2 months, let's say, and say, this is what I'm going to spend. But you can kind of probably you're constantly keeping eyeing yourself in that you're not going to go too mad, you know, on things, let's say. So like with the monthly cash flowing, you're not going to start the job either that you know you can't pay for, you know, because you're keeping a track on it every month, let's say. Whereas like you could look at your bank account there in June, and you could say, I have money in the account now, and it's, Jesus, I'm looking good. The water system is coming, like, you know, but you could have a heap of contractors to pay, and, you know, all these boys might be coming in the door in November looking for their money, and you've all the money spent already because you just want to keep an eye on it, let's say, you know.
You've teed up the next question then. So just before we finish up, in terms of how you obviously, how are you paying the contractors, we'll say, because contractors, Teagasc might comment on it in a minute, they seem to have great bankers. They're willing to bankroll them for 10, 12 months of the year in a lot of cases, and they then bankroll farmers as a result, which probably doesn't help farmers in a lot of cases from the point of view of, like you said there, they spend the money because they have it in their account on something else, and when the contractor does come, he's left high and dry, maybe. Yeah, exactly. So Plenty's coming as well, yeah. So I suppose we'll say, you're paying your contractor on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, we pay the contractor. Let's say he'd probably do the work there in May now, and he'd probably be paid before July. He'd be probably paid next week, really, to be honest with you. Any work that was done in May is probably paid the month after, you know. Okay. So it's
kind of talking your 60 days credit kind of scenario.
Yeah. You know, and the same with the feed. We're in the purchasing group there, so it's every month. Like the feed is paid for the same system, and the fertilizer is paid for the same way as well. To be honest, you know, and it kind of I suppose all the heavy lifting is done now. Like, so we can from now on we can put a bit of a reserve in, and we can see then. In 2 or 3 months, if you like in September, you can look at if you wanted to put in your water system, could you do it? Like, you know, but you know, with more confidence. You know?
And in terms of just the final question for you then is in terms of, okay, as I said at the start, we came into January and there was real positive talk about milk price, that it was going to be a real bumper year for us all involved, and then the carpet was pulled from under our feet, and it looked like we were going to get an awful tumble altogether. Would you have sat down at that stage then and kind of rethought or rejigged kind of the plan for the year, or a larger? I know you're not doing an annual budget now, but we'll say in terms of an overall what's going to come in now for this year on the basis of last year. We're milking similar number of cows.
Yeah.
We're expecting to do the same kind of production again. So we're
Yeah.
going to be down X or Y, like Teagasc said.
Yeah.
Did you do that on a?
We kind of did. We kind of did. To be honest, we're actually doing capital job as well this year. Like so, we went to the bank earlier, let's say, and said to them that we were probably going to finance a little part of. Well, we were going to probably finance 20 or 30 grand of it ourselves, let's say, you know. And we were going to get a loan out on the rest of it. That was the first day plan. But like we decided then in February that maybe it would be better if we didn't. That if we financed the whole lot, it was probably safer, and we could, like Teagasc said, is to build up a bit of cash, and we could always pay it back sooner, you know, rather than leaving ourselves tight. And we're delighted we did that now at the moment because, you know, we're not under any pressure at the moment now because of doing the job, let's say. And look, when you're going doing a job, you might as well get on with it, you know. So no, we're delighted now we did look that way. Like, and I suppose to have a good relationship with your business manager is another big plus as well. Like to have a good business manager is a big thing as well.
I'm just going to actually put one more question to you then, and I'm just going to throw it out to people there to put questions in through the Q&A as well. I suppose, how do you deal with your creditors? I suppose, do you talk to, we'll say, your stakeholders in your business, for want of a better way to describe them? So your contractor rearing your heifers. You have a contractor, obviously. You have meal suppliers. Do you have a very open relationship with them in terms of the finances?
Sure, they probably nearly know the finances of the whole fucking farm, I suppose, really, you know, to tell the truth, you know, that's I can't keep my mouth shut, you know, but they do, like, if I was buying fertilizer now off a fella, I'd ask for the best deal, obviously, like, and I'd tell him, look, I got fertilizer there now, the end of April, and I told him, man, I'll pay you in June, and he's no bother. There's no hassle with you, and he gave me the price. That was it, and I gave him the check the other day. He was out looking at grasses for me, and I gave him the check the other day. So that's the way we kind of do it. Like, and the feed as well. We find with the dairy nuts, like that bill should be paid anyway because they're after eating the nuts, giving you the milk. The money should be there, you know. So that, you know, and the vet as well. We try to pay most bills. We don't want the bills to get up over 4,000 or 5,000, let's say, you know. So we try and pay the silage contractor there when he does the silage. Look, be 3,000 or 4,000. Give him 3,000 or 4,000. He's not coming back at the end of the year looking for 15 or 12,000, or, you know, you've no big building, let's say, you know.
It's so just keeping it all very consistent, keeping it very level.
Drip feed them all, like, you know. Drip feed them all, like, you know. So it's not hurting you. You might be dipping in and out of the overdraft at the start of the year, like, but from now on, you'll be able to build up a bit of fat that will keep you going through the winter, let's say, you know. So, Senti won't be cancelled.
Excellent stuff, Mike. Thanks a million. We're very quiet on the Q&A scenario here. So I suppose I'll ask Teagasc or Patrick if you want to make any comments in terms of advice that you'd give to people that are listening in there as to just any things that they should be thinking of doing in advance of the summer, I suppose, or planning for, like, what advice would you both give to people now that maybe don't realise that they might be running into a cash flow situation? What's the best first thing for them to do? Sit down and do X or do Y? We'll wrap it up then at that.
Yeah, Stuart, look, as I said, I think we're halfway through the year. As you've pointed out, some things didn't go as planned with weather and COVID. So take the opportunity now as the workload on the farm maybe reduced to sit down and see where you are compared to where you were last year. And if you see an issue for the end of the year, move fast and seek help early. The longer you leave it, the harder it is to fix it. So take the opportunity now just to see how good or bad your business is. And for most people, there will be no issue. They'll be quite healthy. But for the odd person that may need a bit of help for whatever reason, go either to your accountant or your local advisor, and start the process to see what to try and give yourself the help for back end.
Okay, and Teagasc, I suppose I'd just ask you to comment, maybe given, like you said there, about the restaurant situation and so
Yeah.
forth, that they're shut down very quickly. So they're in the past, I suppose we mightn't have been competing at a credit control level for with the level of applications that might be coming into the bank as a whole. So in terms of time frame, people probably think today is Thursday and I'll need the money next Thursday, and if I ring Teagasc, I'm going to get it. But what kind of a time frame are we actually talking about, really?
Yeah, so I suppose well, it depends what you're probably doing. If you're looking for an increase in working capital, you probably get it quite quickly. If you're looking at retrospectively funding finance, it might take a bit longer. I suppose what I would say is, I think that, you know, Mike gave some great advice there, and Patrick as well. I completely agree with what Patrick said. One of the simple things you can do is you could sit down and look at where you are this time this year versus this time last year. Like, check what your current account balance was this time last year. You can check it on, like most guys are online now banking. You just go back and check what it was this time last year. And check, you know what your creditors are. And I think a great piece of advice as well, like guys say with the contractor, they say, well, I didn't get a bill off the contractor, so I couldn't pay him. Like, you know what you owe the contractor within reason. You could give him half it now, or like, so you could easily pay on account a chunk of it. And it, like exactly what Mike said, then you're not facing a 15 grand bill in October. So, you know, trying to keep the thing, you know, keep those bills down is a good piece of advice. But the first thing, a very easy thing to do is check where you are versus this time last year. And it's not that hard to do, because current account, you start there. What you owe your co-op, what you owe your other big creditors. If you know, you'll have a good idea what you owe this time last year. That'll tell you a lot.
Very good. Just, I suppose, one question after coming in here, and I might be interpreting it wrong now, Pierce, but I'll put it the way I'm picking it up. Teagasc, what way do you, in terms of, okay, somebody having a 5-year plan, what way do you look at that in terms of, if they're not doing anything big, should people still be doing that kind of a forward planning exercise? If there's no major wholesale change maybe happening on a farm, but
yeah, so that's a good question. Like, what we do is we try to get to the point where we have your sustainable level of your sustainable farming operation, or your long-term farming operation. So really what you're trying to do is, if you're going through an expansion, or you're going through a new entrant or whatever, you try to go, it might be year 3 before you're at full tilt. But when you're at full tilt, that's your budget then, probably going forward. So you just, it's repeat. So it depends so if you're not changing your next 5 years, really we just look at one long-term budget and we go, well, that's going to be hopefully within reason, but no 2 years are going to be the same. But like, if you look at it over 3 or 4 years, it's going to average out around that. So it's about getting to the point where you're at your full production. Because, like, if you are going through expansion, what we always see is efficiencies do drop when you expand, inevitably, and then they catch back up after you've gone through the expansion. Because if you put on a lot of heifers, you're going to have lower production. You know, you're changing in terms of bigger numbers. You know, it's different. You know, getting used to a bigger operation. So it's about making sure the transition period is factored in from a finance point of view.
Okay, so one question for you there, Mike, just before we finish up. So how much time do you spend doing the cash flow, and like, does it feed into doing profit monitor for you? And we'll say, I think in terms of tax bill prediction, do you use it from that point of view? Or, like you said to me earlier, that you're paying your tax bill on a monthly basis anyway, again, just to avoid that hidden bang that Teagasc was talking about there towards the end of the year. So just, I suppose, in terms of the time that you spend on it and using it for profit monitor, then we're one of the first in with the profit monitor anyway, and January on it. So
I'm excited to know how it looks. No, sure. To be honest with you, it probably only takes an hour or two. An hour would even do an awful lot for you, to be fair. Like, let's say, now for us at the moment, it probably only, if you were starting off and you might want to look back over what you were doing last year, something it will take you long time, a good bit of time. But for us at the moment, I'd say you'd even do it under an hour. Let's say I'd nearly do it there while I'm drinking my tea in the morning. You just open up the laptop and you write down what was in the household, what was the ESB, and put them into the book and go through the checkbook. There's only going to be 4 or 5 checks. Put them in. That's it. It doesn't take an awful long time, and your profit monitor is done then in 20 minutes, because you have all the what you spend on feed and the whole lot. Like, I kind of use the profit monitor template, let's say, for my headings, and sure, it's all done then in jig time. Like, to be honest, jig time.
Very good.
Just one comment, Stuart, there, and I suppose now would be a good time to try and get your tax affairs in order, like when work is slacking off, maybe go to your accountant now and then to be going in September, October to try to find out your tax liability for last year. Like, I think now would be a very good time to get on with that job and maybe know in the next couple of weeks what you do or what's owing, because that could be another big bill that would come out of nowhere as well, so maybe now is the time to, because that would tie in with your cash flow as well. Let's say you could be looking back over what you did last year, which would tie in for this year as well from the cash flow point of view.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose the other thing is with getting the accounts together early, it gives you an opportunity, maybe, because in fairness, dairy farming generally does have there's going to be a tax bill, so maybe it can allow people to plan a small bit more in terms of some of the spending that they actually do, which can be, rather than giving it to the taxman. We can actually reap the benefits of it. Like you said earlier, maybe the spur road, like Teagasc said, the water system can be done, rather than having a fear that we're going to be short of cash and then finding out that we actually have a surplus and we end up paying a lot of tax as a result of it. Or, like Patrick often says, we buy the wrong thing with the spare money that we have left over, which doesn't really do any major benefit.
No, any justice.
Exactly. So like spending on lime, stuff like that, they're great investments for future proofing, as you said. And just having that information, knowledge is power, of course, as the saying goes. So look, we'll wrap it up with that. A big thanks to Mike for taking time out to come on to us and talk to us about his system. And we'll be doing a little bit more with you, Mike, in the next couple of weeks to try and show people how you are doing it. Big thanks to Teagasc as well for coming on and giving us his views. And Patrick would have been a key organiser in the whole operation for today. So thanks to Patrick. And following what Mark Gibson does on a Friday on the environmental webinars, I better thank Patrick O'Connor, who's in the background all the time working on the recordings and so forth. So we have been running into a little bit of difficulty there lately with the recordings, but hopefully we'll get them right, and people will be able to watch back, because there's a lot of good information in today's webinar. And thanks a million for coming on, everybody, and we'll just invite you to come back again next week when we'll be talking to Gordon Peppard, who's the farm structures specialist within Teagasc. We'll also be talking to Keane Job and David Fogarty, 2 guys that are managing farms currently, just to outline how they've progressed in their careers in dairy farming. We look forward to meeting you then, and thanks everybody, and take care and stay safe.
That's all for this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, and don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with our usual Dairy Edge interview on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and thanks for listening.